Hey guys, welcome back to today's vlog. I'm glad to have you here. I have my better half with me. Don't let it go to your head. He wants to be taking a Sunday afternoon nap right now. So do I. We stayed out late last night. We stayed out till like 11:30.
That's late for us.
That's late for us. I'm normally in bed about 9. But anyways, today we thought we would do a Q&A session. We haven't done one of those in a really long time, and I feel really awkward getting on social media asking people like, hey, what do you want to know about me? Because I feel like that's very self-absorbed looking. However, I do like watching Q&As of other YouTubers or people that I follow on social media. I like to get to know people. So for that reason, we do it. So we're going to do a Q&A session with myself and Stan, and then I have a feeling he's going to go take a little nap right after this. So I'm literally just going to read the questions off of my phone, and we're going to answer them quickly and concisely, okay?
Concisely.
Is that a word?
Yeah, I don't know about quickly.
We're not going to chase rabbits, okay? Or squirrels. None of that mess. Okay, first question.
Squirrel!
First question is, do you ever argue?
Every day. We used to argue every day, but then I just got tired, so I just keep quiet, and that way we don't argue.
Yeah. Or you just do what I say, really. That's really what it is.
Yeah, you can believe whatever you want. No,
Yeah.
we don't argue a lot. I think we're too busy to argue.
Yeah, we don't argue a whole lot. We never really have. And I feel like when you're looking at couples, like you have those couples that argue over nitpicky little stupid things, and then you have other couples who rarely argue, but when they do argue, it's like a, couple times a year over big stuff, and that's kind of how we are. So we don't really argue over nitpicky little things most of the time, unless we're cranky, like today. He's a little cranky.
Yeah, but when I
So I have to keep him in check.
Yeah, but I get over it like in 5 seconds after it's over. And she gets over it like in 5 days.
Yeah, I don't get over things quickly.
Yeah, I'm very forgiving. She's not, so.
Maybe you're just more mean to me, and therefore I need more time to heal.
Maybe I look mean, but everybody that knows me knows I am the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah. So that
Any woman would be lucky to be married to me in case I'm ever single again.
Yeah, okay. Next question is, someone asked, why give Isabel growth hormones? Seems like the smaller she is, the better because of some of her issues, meaning she would be easier to handle if she's not big and growing and all of those things. So tell them why.
Well, there's many reasons why medically that she needs growth hormones to be able to produce certain things in her body. But also, I mean, that's guessing at what she's going to be able to do in life. That's limiting her before she's actually limited herself in what she can do. It's kind of like if I say to your kid, hey, while you're teaching your kid to walk, they're just going to be harder to manage when they get older. Okay, well, that might be true, but I mean, that's what we're here for. So, we want her to be the best Isabel she can be, so we're going to plan for the best. And then if she's never able to do something specific like that,
we adjust.
Yeah. But we're going to plan for the best.
Yes, and give her every advantage to be the best she can be. So, good question though.
Plus it keeps us in shape.
Yeah, it does keep us in shape and tired. Okay, next question. Have you homeschooled your kids since kindergarten? Have they ever gone to public school at all?
No, I've homeschooled them pretty much their whole lives. And it's really hard on me, especially since I have a full-time job. And Ashley sits home and really does what she does, but I do most everything else. Actually, everything else. So it's just tough on me sometimes, but I can't just demand things of her. I'm not her slave master.
Do you want me to tell them the truth now? Yes, we have homeschooled since day one. None of our kids have ever gone into public school. We started out just thinking we would take it year by year, and then that turned into we would homeschool until junior high, and then we would reevaluate. And then I think we very quickly realized that homeschooling was probably going to be lifelong for our family, and I don't necessarily foresee it changing in the future. That is the true answer, not that stuff you just heard. What kind of man do you see Emerson marrying?
He better be a very fearful man.
Yeah.
Fearful of me.
Fearful of me. Fearful of Emerson. Emerson's pretty sassy. No, Emerson is, she's about to be 19 years old, so who knows when marriage will happen for her. It could be sooner or it could be much later. We don't really know. But what kind of man do you think she's going to marry? Well, got to be a strong man.
I think he'll be strong, but I think he'll be more quiet because she's loud. She's like her daddy, whoever that is.
Yeah, I don't think you can deny Emerson. So Emerson is very strong. She's opinionated. She has a heart for people. She has a heart for missions. She's very relational. I do think what Stan said, I think her better half will probably be a little more quiet. Or maybe have more of like a quiet strength about him, because he'll need to be a strong man.
He'll be a strong leader, I think, but I think he'll be quieter because she's louder.
Yeah,
like
not
me.
in a negative way. We don't mean that in
Yeah.
a negative way, but she's just a little more like Stan. Take that how you will.
Well, I mean, she's loud and in your face like I am, but she's sarcastic sometimes like her mama. So.
But sometimes when I hear people say loud, I think like obnoxiously, like in your face.
That's not what I mean. It's just when she speaks, everyone will know.
Yeah.
I mean, she gets her point across very solidly.
Yeah. But I think she's going to want someone who has a lot of the same interests that she has, obviously. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what her future husband's going to look like, but it'll be interesting to see.
He'll be a good man.
Yes. Our friend Kaylee asked, what does date night look like for y'all? How often and what do you do when you go on a date night?
What's a date night?
I don't know. We haven't had one in a while. No.
We had one last night.
I know. I'm just joking. I was going along with yours.
Why are you arguing with me?
We do not have scheduled date nights like once a week or once a month. We always go out. It's just kind of,
Hey, you want to go eat?
hey, you want to go out to eat? And sometimes I shoot him down because he asked me after I already have food in the crock pot and I'm grungy and I feel gross and I don't feel like getting dressed. I just want to be home. So there have been several times lately I'm like, no, I don't want to tonight. But mainly because I want to prepare for it. Like, I'm like, okay, I want to shower and get dressed, look somewhat presentable. So no, we do not have scheduled date nights. They're just kind of whenever we decide we're wanting to go out and go out alone. So what do? We just go out to eat because we both like to eat. And so last time we went out to eat was for our anniversary a few weeks ago, and we literally sat down and we got 3 big old appetizers. And then we both got a meal, and then we just sat there and visited for about an hour and a half. And then we came home, and that was it.
About 10 minutes after eating, I'm like, are you ready to go? And she's like, no, I just want to sit here.
Yeah.
It's quiet. And I'm like, it's not quiet. We're in a restaurant, but it's quiet compared to a house full of kids.
Yeah, well, you just don't have people asking you 99 questions or whatever. Next question is, why does Izzy have those uncontrollable movements? Will she be able to recover? So those uncontrollable movements are called stimming, and they come in many different forms and fashions. A form of stimming for some people is just like flicking their nails or something like that, whereas Izzy's form of stimming is very like lots of movements with her whole body, and it pretty much just means that she is unable to control her emotions. That's the easiest way to put it. I don't understand stimming and all its complexities, but
Well, just like a lot of us have behaviors, like you always brush your hair out of your eyes. It relaxes people.
yeah,
Sometimes with stimming, it's like that.
yeah,
You'll see her, and a lot of times she'll be hitting her, and it's relaxing for her.
Yeah.
Now, it can get to the point where it becomes very destructive or harmful, but usually we stop that. But
for an example, in church, now she loves to hear the music. And as soon as she starts hearing the drums go and the music ramping up, I mean, her whole body goes tense. And then her feet just start falling in her hands, and she is so excited and just like you can tell she cannot control her emotions because she's so excited. So all those stimming behaviors come out. Whereas a couple years ago, when she really didn't have much response to sound, and when her response to sound was waking up, that loud music disturbed her greatly,
Yeah,
and so her form of stimming then was to kind of like stop and just hit. So like I think her form of stimming,
it changes.
it changes with the mood and what's giving her stimulation.
And the severity of it changes too.
Yeah. So will she ever recover from it? My gut says no, but will it improve? Yeah. And will it become hopefully something that's more controlled? Yes. But I'm sure she's always going to have some form of stimming in one way or another. This is a great question. It says, how do you cope with a big family? She said, I am already going crazy and exhausted with just one kid.
One kid is hard.
Yeah, one kid is hard.
3 kids is hard. Have 2 kids or 4 or more.
2 kids, 4 or more.
That's true.
Well, your first kid, I mean, you're learning how to become a parent, and you're learning what works for yourself and your spouse and what works for your child. There's a lot of trial and error on parenting any child because they're so different, honestly, and they respond differently to different ways of discipline and all of those things. But I feel like your first kid, you're a little more wound tight because you're wanting to do everything correctly.
Perfect,
yeah. And with kid number 1, you are listening to so much outside noise, outside advice.
Reading all the books
because you want to be prepared, which is good. So I feel like you're just a little more uptight with one kid, but I promise you, just like anything else, once you get in there and kind of figure out your groove and find what works for you and what doesn't, the next time you're...
Routine.
Yeah.
Routine's very important.
Oh, routine, yeah.
And the more kids you have, the more of a routine you get in. Routines make things very easy.
Yeah. Routines do make things very easily. Now, we have never been like a hardcore, strict, scheduled routine family, but we do have a rhythm in our family. We always have. Our kids kind of know what's coming up next, and so we're kind of we walk the middle road in that area, whereas I know some families are extremely scheduled and it works for them.
Well, look for the positives in it too. A lot of people say, oh my goodness, how do you have so many kids? It must be so hard. Which it is harder, but there's also a lot more positives to having more kids too. Yeah. And people always want to look at the negative, and it's strange for somebody like me to say that because I'm often a negative person. But there are so many positives to having a bigger family that most people don't get until they have a bigger family. But I would never go back and have fewer kids. If anything, we would choose to start earlier in adopting, and we would be up to probably 12 to 15.
Yeah. So while a lot of people hear that we have 6 kids plus 1 waiting in China, and now we've got Emerson's best friend living with us, so we're parents to 8, I guess you could say. Like our older kids, ours obviously are spaced out over the course of 22 years. And so our older kids help out tremendously. I do think the age gap between your kids makes a difference because ours have always been 2.5 to 3 years apart. So like when a newborn was entering the home, the oldest siblings, they were old enough, they were more independent to help. So I think for me that makes a big difference because you have kids who are older siblings who are able to help contribute, and we could not keep adopting if it wasn't for our older biological kids. Like I get emotional thinking about that because they help out so much, and we see that while to some people it looks chaotic to add more kids to our family, to us it's more like we see how it's changing the hearts of our other kids and hopefully steering them in the same direction to want to help the needy, to want to help the ones who are fatherless. And like, to us, that's completely worth the chaos and the frazzleness that you experience day in and day out. So like Stan said, I think you got to look at like, what's your great purpose in having kids, and why do you have a desire for us to continue bringing kids into our home? And that purpose is what fuels us. Next question is a good one. How big is your home, and do you have plans of moving? Our house is like what, 2,000?
About 2,100 square feet. It's 4 bedrooms, but it's not big enough.
But it's not big enough. I remember when we moved in here, I guess 7.5 years ago, we came from a 1,200 square foot house to like a 2,000 plus square foot house with a big backyard and pool and a patio, you know, and we
thought it was big.
I just remember thinking, I'm never going to be able to fill up all this cabinet space, and like, there's so much space. It's just so much. And now, 7.5 years later, I'm like,
so yeah,
we're busting out the seams.
We had planned, we had already bought some land. We bought about 8.5 acres. And we were planning on building a barn-dominium, and it was a fairly large barn-dominium, and it was a 6-bedroom. But since inflation hit, to build, we would have to make it smaller, which would defeat the purpose of us building. So we're just kind of put it on hold for a little while to see what the economy is going to do. But eventually that's where we're going to go. We're going to go to the land and build, and hopefully build big. Mm-hmm. That way we'll have more room if we do add other kids in the future.
When we do add other kids in the future.
Well, unless God stops us. I mean,
okay.
You're not clairvoyant.
I don't know what that word means.
I should be homeschooled.
Yeah. So, are we busting out the seams at our house? Yes, but this is a great house. It's been very good to us. But it definitely hinders our plans in future adoptions. So,
and we have great neighbors here too.
We have great neighbors. We're in a good location, right in town.
A lot of old people live in this neighborhood, which means it stays quiet, except for our kids.
Yeah. It will be interesting though, because the land that we bought and where we will build a barn-dominium is like 20 minutes from us. It's out in Timbuktu, out in the country, and right now we live in the heart.
It is surrounded by woods for miles and miles.
Yeah, but I'm so excited. I can't wait. So yeah, we have a beautiful home. It's been very good to us. But to say that I'm ready for like a big new house, I am. This is a great question. Have you been less fearful as each adoption comes on, or the same level, just in different ways? I'm going to let you answer that.
Yes. Less fearful.
Less fearful?
I mean, it's like anything else. It's just like in your faith walk. When you first get into something new, it always scares you. You're afraid. For example, in adoption, I think one of the biggest fears, or one of the two biggest fears, one is financial, and one is, how is this going to affect my other children? And, you know, that popped into our minds, mainly the financial part in the beginning, but we're to the point now we don't worry about money, which, I mean, you have to have it, but it's just not a fear of ours anymore. We know God will provide. Mm-hmm. We don't worry how it will affect our kids because we've seen it firsthand. Adoption has been one of the greatest things for our biological children. So there's not really a lot of fearful things when we think about adoption. I think there are some times that we understand that sometimes with the trauma that can come with children, you do have to be able to adapt, but it's not something that we fear. It's something that we just recognize that we may have to adapt to certain situations.
Yeah, with our first adoption of Michaela, I remember we had a lot more fear and just the unknowns. and we felt like we had to have answers for everything that we could foresee coming up.
And we typically did have
we have plan A if this happens, plan B, plan C, and plan D if it all falls through. I mean, that's kind of like what he does. He's just a planner, and he can foresee things that might arise and cause challenges for us. Anyways, and then like he said, once you walk through it the first time, you just, I don't know, I think you gain so much wisdom. There is a fly. You gain so much wisdom. You gain comfort in knowing and seeing that the Lord always provides, and He always provides, not just financially, because I think a lot of people think of that when they're like, He provides financially. He does, but in so many other ways that He provided for. So then when Isabel came up, I mean, we were fearful because we knew she was coming from a very hard place, and I had many thoughts of like, am I capable of taking care of a child like her? I don't know anything about how to parent a blind child and all of these things. And so many people would like send us, ideas and blind schools and all these things, which were very helpful. But I just remember like being like, yeah, I think I'm just supposed to walk blindly. No pun intended. But I felt like God just wanted us to like just trust Him. Like, quit trying to get all the answers. Quit trying to figure everything out. Yes, use wisdom in making decisions throughout the process, but just trust Him. And I feel like that's really what we did. And then that brought us to our third adoption, where we're just...
Yeah, I think a lot too. I think society has made people more fearful, to where we think, oh, if we don't have a plan or if we don't have experience in doing something, we shouldn't do it, which is not true, because you would never do anything at that point. But a lot of I forgot the saying, but it talks about how many of the worries that we have are things that never actually happen. We worry about things before the time comes, and we quit doing that. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't have adopted Isabel because, truthfully, we know nothing about blind children. We have a lot of friends that do, but we knew nothing.
And
But we shouldn't let that stop us and say, oh, well, we know nothing about blind children, so we shouldn't adopt a blind child. No, you overcome and adapt. You learn to deal with what's before you.
That's good. Overcome and adapt. Smart.
It's military.
Smart. Yeah. It's smart. But like you just said, how we both just said, we don't know how to raise a blind child, and especially in the beginning when we were pursuing her, like we didn't know how to raise a blind child or parent a blind child. And what you just said, that quote about how we're fearful of things that probably will never become an issue, I feel like Isabel's blindness is the least of our concerns.
It hasn't been a big issue yet.
It hasn't been a big issue yet. And I understand when she gets more mobile and things like that, it might be challenging.
But her challenges are...
not her blindness.
No, we have much worse things to worry about than that.
Yeah.
So you just take what's before you. It's that 3-foot rule. What's right here. Don't worry about things that are a mile away. Worry about what's before you now.
And that's huge for Stan Phelps to say. Because
yes.
He looks like 5 miles.
And I'm not saying I don't do that anymore. I love to plan. But I also recognize the fact that all I can control to an extent is what's right in my little world. Mm-hmm. I can plan for what's ahead in a mile down the road, but ultimately, until it gets here, I can't be assured that that's what's gonna happen. So my plan might have been for naught.
Yeah. This is a great question asked by our friend Daphne. If you could each give one piece of advice to a couple getting married, what would it be? That's a loaded question. Did she say
one? Each of you give one?
One.
Okay, that's not fair because I never give just one of anything. But mine would be this, and this is really for Christians. If you're both following hard after Christ, it makes marriage a lot easier. It just does. When you're both following after each other and then you're trying to follow Christ on the side, it can become hectic. But, I've always said before, and some people may misunderstand what I say, but I always say, you don't have to worry about me divorcing Ashley. But it's not because of Ashley. And it's really not because of me. It's because of Christ. I follow him, and I do what he wants me to do. And as long as I'm doing that, you can overcome a lot of stuff and a lot of bitterness and anger that you might have towards your spouse. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm just saying if you're both, and I say both, I don't say one, if you're both following Christ, your marriage is so much better.
However, what about people who are in a position, they're already married, okay, so they're already married. One is following after Christ.
And one is not.
And one is not.
And listen, this is a hard thing. And I guess we're doing a marriage counseling now. But this is a hard thing. Number one, if you're a Christian before you're married, you shouldn't even be dating non-Christians. There's a lot of people that have forgotten that today, but you live in two different worlds. You have different world views, and you're asking for trouble. But there are those situations where people do, and they get married, or where they become Christians after they're married and their spouse isn't a Christian. Well, the Bible's very clear on this. If you're married to an unbeliever and they're willing to stay with you, you're to stay with them. Now, it's going to be harder. I'm not going to tell you it's not. You're going to need more grace, more mercy, more patience, more understanding. But that's where God's called you at that point, just to stay with them and to be an example for them as you follow Christ. And just pray for that spouse. That's about all you can do. You can't change them.
I saw on social media the other day, I don't remember which platform, but it was a lady. She was making it comical, but there was so much truth into it. And it was, you are not your spouse's Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. Meaning, like, it is not, and I think women can sometimes get a bad rep for this, for being a nag and, like, pointing out to our husbands what they're doing wrong and they should have done it better. But, like, what she was saying is, like, it's not our job, it's not the wife's job to convict our husband in a way that only the Holy Spirit can. Meaning, we need to quit. I feel like this comes into play, especially when you've got one believer and one who is not. Like, it's not your job to lead your husband or your spouse to Christ. You have to leave that to the Holy Spirit. All you can do is control what you can do, which is what Stan just said, which is to be in prayer and just purposefully seeking Christ, and he will hear your prayers. And I just thought that was really good. And I feel like that you can even take that out of, like, the whole, what's the word? And I feel like you can even take that whole little, what she was trying to portray there. And, like, it's not our job to correct and fix our spouses and treat them like our children. It's our job to be their equal, to be their helpmate. And that's hard.
And it is. But, and you were talking about people that were married to an unbeliever. But even with two believers, and I think I don't think it's as much of a problem now as it has been in the past, but when I was growing up, you were taught that you sought the Lord as a couple because you've become one, and when God looks at you, he sees you as, one entity, and so, typically the husband would lead and the wife would follow. And let me tell you something, that can become very dangerous when you're talking about following Christ, because I've seen that so often to where one or the other follows Christ and the other one follows the one that's following Christ. And that's just not true. When Ashley and I stand before Christ, we're going to be judged individually. Now, there are certain things that happen because we are one right now here on this earth, but ultimately our eternity is, in God's hands and how we respond to him, not how we respond to him as a couple.
Yeah. And
so, you both want to follow Christ, but you're also going to give an answer to him individually.
Yeah. My one piece of advice, I don't have any one piece of advice. Like, I have a lot of advice, But I think because what we just talked about has a lot to do with obviously being a Christian and following Christ. But my piece of advice would be for anyone, whether you follow Christ or not, is communication. And if you're not communicating with your spouse, it just will make very small issues or challenges become like huge mountains. Stan and I have been guilty of it, where we just, you go through seasons of life where you're just like, you're exhausted with life. Life is overwhelming. You've got so much going on. You're working so many hours. You're not seeing each other enough. And you just kind of become like two people existing in a house together instead of a husband and wife on the same team working towards the same goals in life. And then it just makes you want to shut down, because it does me, and I know it does you. And then it turns into like this whole huge mountain of issues, all because you just didn't communicate, like whatever it is, whether it's a frustration in something that happened, or maybe it's having to do with your relationship. I don't know, but communication is key, right?
And a lot of times people, when you talk about communication, they think you're talking about, before you blow up, communicate that big thing, and that's not the case. You have to be communicating the little things daily, and if you do that, you typically won't get to the big things.
Yeah.
It's when you don't communicate daily on the little things that you end up having to communicate on the big things, or bad things end up happening.
Yeah, that was my point I was trying to make. Did it not come out right?
Well, I answered for you because,
Thanks, babe. You're always correcting me.
And Grace. I know that's my second answer. But you know what? I have troubles changing me.
So you can't change me.
Exactly.
So stop.
I've got to give her grace, because as great as my wife is, she's not perfect. She's never going to be perfect, and I'm way from perfect. So you got to extend grace, and I'm not one of them kind of people that's very good at that. But you have to learn.
Yep. Okay, we're going to end it here. That's the end of the questions. There were a lot more questions about Isabel and Mika and special needs, but we've answered those in so many other vlogs. So I'll put a little tag here to that playlist if you want to go listen to our other Q&A sessions. If you have any questions for us or would love for us to address any topics, I'm always up for the ideas. So leave a question or a comment down below, and I'll read every single one of them, and we'll go from there. But we're going to close it out here. Stan needs a nap, and I've got sweat rolling down my back for some reason.
She's next to me. She gets hot.
Yeah, get hot. Thank y'all for joining us. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that now, and we will see y'all next time. Bye.